And this is the Coins, Cashflow, and Conversations podcast. I am your host, Dakota Grady, sponsored by Upstate Essential Solutions. If you need help with your personal finances or your accounting and taxes for your business, contact me today at dakotagrady.com. I'm also helping people to learn how to invest. So if you're learning how to invest or want to learn how to invest, check out my website at dakotagrady.com. More to come on that information. So today I have a friend of mine, Miss Kia Jarmon of the MPR agency. I maybe got that wrong, but MEPR agency, I think is what it is, my bad, Kia. But she can tell you more about who she is and what she does. And I want to thank you for joining me. So Kia, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Dakota. I'm so proud of what you've been building. It's been so great to watch you all these years. And so I'm grateful to be here.
Yes, ma'am. So I hope I got that right. Is it the MEPR agency, right?
That's right. MEPR.
Gotcha.
Yeah, you got it.
So tell us about who you are and what you do, Kia.
Yeah. So as you mentioned, I am Kia Jarmon. I, for the past 17 years, have led MEPR agency. We have now evolved into a communication and community engagement consultancy, really focused on making sure that organizations and individuals in communities are able to come together, particularly around high impact initiatives. So think about your large city initiative, your large infrastructure project around transit or water or affordable housing, and think about who does and doesn't get access to those processes. And so I make sure that the individuals who are often most I like to say disrespected in our government or our city, I have access to the fullness of that process. I also am a professional speaker and provide diversity, equity, inclusion, justice, and anti-racism training for a variety of organizations across the country, even international, to make sure that they also are honoring the fullness of humanity and that they're coming to grips with still all of these years later. So we often think 2020 was the beginning of this conversation, but the 1960s really is where we began having these conversations very intentionally. And so we're still having the same conversations. My hope is to disrupt the cycle of diversity talk and really move us into equity and justice, but mostly move us into seeing each other as better humans and operating in that way. So I do a lot of work around that as well.
So one thing I'm passionate about is our people. I love everybody, but people like you and me, Of course, I'm light skinned with you, you brown skin.
Yeah. My baby's light skinned, so I'm down with the light skinned folk too. Okay.
So one thing I'm passionate about too is personal finances, money and business, right?
Yeah.
Stats have shown me that 43% of Blacks make $30,000 or less.
Yeah.
43% of Blacks own home compared to 74% of whites.
Mm-hmm.
And African Americans, we lack knowledge in personal finances and financial literacy.
Yeah.
That is alarming to me because we made collectively $1.6 trillion with a T.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't really own homes, businesses. Most of us have low wages. And we're employees. We're not entrepreneurs. We're not entrepreneurs. So talk about that, please, because that's something that people may skate over. Mm-hmm. We may not even talk about that, but this is an important topic right here. So can you address some of those issues right there?
Yeah. So when I hear things like that, because those stats can run in almost any other industry or system you're talking about, whether it's healthcare, of course, you talked about housing, you talk about education, you talk about workforce and employment, we can run the gamut on every industry. And there's a huge disparity about where Black people exist versus others. And so when I hear those stats, what I first go to is the system or the condition that created that platform for our inability to be successful. So sometimes, in the way that America works, and in particular the way that white supremacy works, is it says, no, you need to pull yourself up by the bootstrap. I'm working on a food insecurity project now, and the way that it shows up in that industry is, well, why don't Black folks, why are they unhealthy? Why are they overweight? Why are they obese? There are all these questions that come up. And so then in turn, I go back to the system that has created the condition. I say, why is there not access to fresh fruits and vegetables in the community? And why is there not access to sidewalks to be able to walk towards a food and vegetable market? Or why is there not a bus line that can get me successfully to a place that's within my community that is culturally relevant to my eating pattern? Because I also shouldn't have to just eat another type of food. I should be able to eat culturally relevant food. Why isn't it that I have, or the store that is available to me has expired foods? And we're talking about large chains too. We're not just talking about small chains. So I'm always looking at the system and encourage people to go and find the system that is most disproportionately harming our people. It's not because individuals don't make up systems, but it's also because if we remove every person from the world and we, had all new people, that system would still be there because it's embedded in the lifeblood, in the very foundation, in the texture of our world. And so when we address the system, when we know the system, now I can really make my approach towards where's the policy shift? Where's the process shift? Where's the programmatic shift that will support the system change? So I'm not blaming Black folks for the conditions they're in. I do want to hold us accountable once we are aware of the system, right? So I'm not saying that we got to take our hands off. What I'm saying is now we got to go to the resilience of our people, of our ancestors, and say, now I'm going to really work hard to make sure that, because I know this information, like what you're doing on this podcast, I'm going to share it with other people. Awareness is a strong tool. We often think we got to act. If you understand that we are 212 plus years behind in the racial wealth gap behind white folks, if you understand that, then you also will understand that doing a bunch of action over these last several hundred years has not decreased that number necessarily. In some instances, that number has gotten more disparate. We have gotten further away from that number because now things are going up even more, and we're still staying at the same jobs. We're talking about an entry wage job being the same price today or the same rate today as it was, 10, 15, 20 years ago when I was entering the job market over 20 years ago. We're talking about it hasn't gone up much, that I was making $7.25 or whatever an hour over 20 years ago. And still people are I'm still looking at jobs and I'm saying, what can you do with what can you do with $15 an hour? And so we do not need to overlook how important awareness is in this process, that we need to help our people understand this is a systemic issue. This is not just an individual issue. Once we understand that, now we can all go into our separate coalitions if we need to and begin to make plans for what are we going to do. And so some folks are responsible for saying, we understand that redlining has happened in all of these communities. And because of that, we need realtors who are willing to say, I'm going to work out some opportunities so that these families who do have homes, who were able to purchase homes here, that now I can work with Black families to get them to replace one for one, right? We got to be intentional about how we use our business when we're in entrepreneurship. We got to be intentional about how we use our voice. We have to be intentional. And I'm a person who says, I'm going to hold the line every time. Some of us can be boldly over the line like myself, and some of us got to be internal actors, but you got to know your role. And so all of us have a role and responsibility. And now that we're aware, what am I going to do with my awareness? And my job, in my personal job, is to say, I'm going to hold this space. And I'm going to hold the space to be disruptive, and I'm going to hold the space to be loud about it. And I don't have to have all the details to just hold the line. And so, I'm not necessarily in the finance industry, of course. I'm in a lot of industries. I'm very industry agnostic. I can work in a lot of spaces. But what I can tell you is the system is creating this harm. And we got to really figure out what we're going to do and how we're going to either play within the system or totally blow the system up. And listen, I'm okay with the latter. We can totally blow the system up and get to work together that way.
I like that, being disruptive. You want to make something stand out. Honestly, I think I'm one of the people who are disruptive too, because most people, they love debt. Me, I hate debt because I know that it's a weight, a strain on, especially Black folks. One thing that I know that we know how to do well is borrow freaking money.
Yeah.
And when we do that, we pay back more than we borrow. We pay back principal plus interest. And that's how people stay in the trap. And I'm like, it's a mindset, but I'm gonna hold the line like you and be different, because I don't want to be like everybody else.
Yeah.
Freaking broke.
Yeah.
Struggling. I'm like, be different, blow your income up. And if you play the game on Monopoly, the old game, I don't know about the new game, but when you play the game Monopoly, you bought everything from city utilities, well, not states, utilities, houses, hotels, all with cash. So I'm like, if you didn't have debt, you have more money, one, and two, if you had money, you wouldn't have to borrow money. Right? It's like, it's common sense, but in our culture, man, we are so bombarded with build my credit, build my credit, build my credit. I'm like, nah, bro, nah, sis. You're gonna stay broke if you keep borrowing people money, because OPM, the cost of doing that is making somebody else rich.
Yeah. Part of it is that we, a lot of my work, particularly with Black folks, has been about supporting them in finding out how to uncouple with white supremacy, which is what you're talking about. When you're talking about that we got access to borrow. See, once we got access to get credit cards, because we weren't allowed to be in certain stores, we weren't allowed to be at certain restaurants. And then because the system is also very smart and it recognizes how much value Black people have. See, from the beginning, Black people have always been very valuable, right? But what we haven't seen is what we've been told is that we're not valuable. So, but that's the great confusion. I said that's the number one tenet of white supremacy, is that it's confusing, because confusion says that you cost as a human more than real estate. So when plantations were around, the plantation itself wasn't the value. The human capital, the people working the land, was the value. This is why you're not necessarily seeing in the history books, not saying it doesn't exist, but you're not seeing people on auction blocks auctioning off homes. You're seeing people auction off people. And so that's the great dichotomy that we live in. I often say, if you want to know how much wealth Black people have, you can look at the Nielsen reports, you can look at the beauty and consumer reports. We absolutely have access. What I want us to understand is why the system, understanding that the system is harming you, is important, and an important awareness to me, is because then you can go back and uncouple what you have been taught about white supremacy, which is that you are supposed to, as an example, work twice as hard or 10 times as hard to get further. Well, we've worked 10 times as hard and our bank accounts still reflect very low amounts of money. As a matter of fact, we still walk into the bank, and I've walked into the bank before, and they look at me and ask me, what do you do for a living? How are you able to have this money that comes in the bank or out of the bank? How are you supposed to do? So we're still being disrespected at every level. And this is why it's important that we understand the system so we can sit with our families. What the system has also taught us is not to trust each other. And so when we think about it familially, what we should be thinking about is, how do I, as my family, I got a lot of family members. I'm a Nashville resident, native, born and raised, right? I got a lot of family members. We should own blocks of real estate. We should own blocks of real estate. We should own blocks of business. We should own, why? Because it's nothing more than us just saying, hey, let's all just put $5 together a year. You know, like, you don't even got to put a lot, just put a little money in. In over 20 or 30 years, we can have a pile of money. I'm not even asking folks to do a lot. We haven't done that because we've been taught not to trust each other, because we don't trust ourselves. When I don't trust myself, I cannot gift you my trust. And so what we've been taught through all of the harm that we've been through is not to have any trust and belief in ourselves. So when we do well, when we are successful, we are all like shocked, as if our legacy is not of excellence, as if before we came to this country where we were not dealing in high levels of commerce and agriculture and all of the amenities of the earth, as if we weren't doing that before we even got here, as if when we were told that we couldn't have access to read and write, and we were being literally lynched for doing those things. Why do you think that is? Our native language is not English. We don't speak this language. Why would you keep us from speaking a language we never spoke to begin with? because the concern, the harm, or the hate and the fear is that we will learn more about how excellent we are. And so it is important for us in what you're saying and in what you're doing, really to take inventory of what have we been kept from. They say there are 3 ways to conquer people. You conquer their land, you conquer their God, their faith, or you conquer their culture. And so we got to go back and reclaim those things, those attributes of who we are. We are faithful people. And because we are faithful people, we have to learn. We trust something that we can't even see. And so I should be able to trust my own family. Right? I should be able to put together some money with my own family. We have a culture that is rich in history and understanding, but we are disconnected and unfamiliar with who we are. And we certainly don't have access to our land in the way that we had in before. And so it's important for us to reconnect with ourselves in the land, because spiritually we are of the land. And that is really important. So not to cut you off, but I just had to say that because I want people to understand this is why the awareness is so critical. Because if you get aware of how the system is harming you, you can go back and forgive yourself, forgive your family for not teaching you differently, and then you can move forward. The process of forgiveness is really in the process of being free, because to forgive yourself for making decisions and to move forward.
Wow. Like, I know time is up, but man, this here is something that is really on my heart. I'm passionate about, because we do have value. Everybody has the value, but we have been devalued, and other people have been elevated. But let's come back for another conversation, because I want to continue the conversation, because I think that part there about us not working together needs to be tackled and addressed. So here, how can we find out about you on social media and your website?
Yeah, you can find me on all the platforms, KiaJarmon.com, and I'm Kia Jarmon on all the social platforms. I look forward to connecting with you.
Yes, ma'am. So y'all, check out this podcast, share it with your family, your friends, your community, because people need it. And whatever Kia is doing, support her and her endeavors with diversity, because hey, we all know that racism is still alive, it's still well, but Kia is stepping into her role and being a disruptor. So check out her website and support her initiatives. Check out me on my website, dakotagrady.com, and Upstate Essential Solutions is here to serve you for accounting, taxes, and personal finances. And if you want to learn how to invest, keep on following me to learn how to manage your coins. This is the Coins, Cashflow, and Conversations podcast. Thanks again, Kia.
Thank you, Dakota.